Patricia Johnson, and I'm the chairperson of the Oratorical Contest Committee. This is the 22nd year that we've hosted this contest. We received numerous essays from middle and high school students throughout Manatee County addressing the following topic. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but we must never lose infinite hope." What does this quote mean to you? The Martin Luther King contest is comprised of a written and an oral component. The students were evaluated based on how they complied with the rules of the contest, how they addressed the topic, the effectiveness of their introduction and their conclusion, how innovative their approach to the topic was, and just how they did it, right? Tonight's oral presentations will be evaluated based on all aspects of the speech's delivery. Each finalist will be asked to present his or her essay tonight. Please state your name, your school, and your grade level before you begin. That's your name, your school, and your grade level before you begin. I would like to take this opportunity to also thank the judges in the audience. I'm going to introduce them a little bit after, so you guys aren't looking at them while you're judging. And we would like to begin with the competition with the middle school contestants, and then immediately following them, we will hear from the high school competition. There will be 11 students in the middle school category, and 3 students in the high school category presenting tonight. Now, we're going to start with contestant number 1 in the middle school category, and they are going to provide their name, their school, and their grade level before they begin. So, number 1, Caitlin.
My name's Caitlin Kataski. I go to Dr. Mona Jane Middle School, and I'm in 8th grade. One man changed the world forever by spreading hope to everyone and guaranteeing that we will end discrimination for all races so that everyone is treated equally and fairly. But doing a test like this will take time, and it may lead to disappointment. He even states we must accept finite disappointment but must never lose infinite hope. This quote to me means that no matter how awful things get, things will change in the end. Even if we fail hundreds of times, we can't lose hope. And don't give up in what you believe in. No matter how dreadful things are, we must keep believing, for things will turn out in the end. Walt Disney lost his workers, his cartoons, and his business to a company called Mintz. Mintz took almost everything from Walt, but that didn't stop Walt from accomplishing his dream. He decided to keep believing, and things turned around for him in the end. Even Elvis Presley did not begin his career as a famous singer. He is told by a concert hall manager that he should return to Memphis and keep driving a truck. But he did not, and he became a legend. NASA did not make it their first attempt to Mars. NASA states more missions have failed going to Mars than not, 28 flops compared to 19 successes. This goes to show that things will fail and we will get in challenging times. But even so, we must keep believing, because things will turn around in the end. But most people, once they fail repeatedly, they give up. But if we don't succeed, we must keep moving forward from our mistakes. When Thomas Edison was inventing a light bulb, he failed 10,000 times trying to make one, but he never once gave up hope trying to make it. He even states, "I never once failed at making a light bulb. I just found 10,000 ways not to make one." Moving forwards from his mistakes, he finally perfected one. Colonel Sanders is known for his famous chicken recipe, but he didn't succeed the first time at trying to make his recipe famous. He set out at the age of 62 with a $105 Social Security check in hand to pitch his chicken recipe to restaurants. 1,009 folks told him he was crazy. He failed 1,009 times at trying to share his recipe to restaurants. He decided not to look back on his failures and opened his restaurant, and his recipe became huge. Even though they failed repeatedly, they never gave up once on what they were trying to accomplish. Lastly, we shouldn't lose hope on what we believe in, even if it may be dangerous. Rosa Parks believed that everyone should be treated equally, and she remained in her seat even though it was against the law at the time. She believed that she shouldn't have to get out of her seat just because of her race, knowing that she could end up in jail because of this. Lincoln believed in ending slavery, and he fought an entire war knowing that half of the population was against it. He did this just because he believed in freedom for all races. His belief is what ended slavery for all in the U.S. Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech to end discrimination for all people. People who didn't want to end it fought back, but in the end, his belief ended discrimination. These famous leaders didn't give up even when they knew it was risky, and their hope led to success. Like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope. Just these few words means a lot more than meets the eye. To me, it means no matter how bad things are, we know they will come out in the end. We must keep moving forwards, even when we fail, and don't give up on what you believe in, even if some people disagree.
Hi, my name is Caroline Barlow Maychuk. I'm an 8th grader who's attending Dr. Mona J. Middle School. And yeah, many people struggle with the exposure of any difficult obstacle they think they cannot complete. Although, when a hurdle seems too high and it seems as though there's nothing you can do, there's always a spark of hope we must never lose. Martin Luther King Jr. once spoke a quote, "We must accept finite disappointment but never lose infinite hope. Because if we do, we will lose interest in important things or events, or even solving problems, big or small, that you are passionate about." Nevertheless, everybody could lose hope, but they don't. They choose to keep their heads high and continue life. That's what many people do, including activists. Of course, civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. changed history, yet he had struggles like everybody on earth. He protested in local areas for racial segregation, and while doing so, he got arrested many times later too. Although he was arrested several periods in his life, he kept fighting for equality for all, not resting until he gets his voice heard about how freedom should be. He was also a part of the Birmingham Campaign, an American movement organized in 1963 by the South Christian Leadership Conference. He and other activists dramatized the situation. During this movement, this is when King made his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech on the Lincoln Memorial, where 250,000 people heard him and his thoughts. King Jr.'s speech provoked the idea of racial freedom, and shortly after, his dreams truly came true. America extirpated segregation. Although he went through some tough battles, he kept rising through the obstacles just to share his proposal on the situation. King is a great example of why people shouldn't lose sight of hope. The famous activist Rosa Parks, although ended up desegregating Montgomery transportation, she went through many troublesome events even from her childhood. She and her family experienced racism from an early age. Imagine experiencing that being so young. When she grew up to be 42, she hopped on a bus and sat in a seat that was reserved for white people. The bus driver asked Parks to move to the proper seat in the back, but as we all know, she refused. She was then arrested. Once she was arrested, the boycott started. Because of her notorious act and the boycott, the city buses in Montgomery are desegregated. Like everyone else, she grew depressed and had fought for years to get justice for Black people. She then got the buses desegregated, which was something she hoped to do. She thought that there was no way she could prove her point in segregation, but she got her voice heard through the boycott and was proud of it. The last famous demonstrator is Harriet Tubman, who successfully led a group of slaves to freedom through the Underground Railroad. Yet, she of course faced difficulty. Some of the struggles she faced included being born into an enslaved household, which made her acquire many hardships even at an early age. Tubman also experienced traumatic occurrences like physical violence almost daily. Some of her were serious incidents where that she mercilessly got hit in the head with a 2-pound lead weight. Though she pushed through the misery and hardships of being a slave, she developed an idea to help free slaves. Tubman thought she could free many slaves by using a railroad system that was underground. So, she sacrificed 10 years of her life to lead slaves up north and to freedom by using the Underground Railroad. It took her a while, but she grew to feel proud when her Underground Railroad plan was successful. Ultimately, the quote that Martin Luther King Jr. spoke expresses the idea of not giving up on a restraint. Even though you might think hope is lost, hope will always find its way to prove you can still achieve. Many people have a period when they lose motivation and the vision of hope is blurry, but they choose to find a spark of hope and to continue life like many others. That's why King's quote is important, because it demonstrates the fact that you must never lose hope and to keep going through the tough times.
Whoops. Thank you. My name is Jacob Gomez. I'm in 8th grade at Dr. Mona Jane Middle School. Have you ever considered how Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave the United States racial equality? Dr. King pursued his goal by, could I restart, please? Have you ever considered how Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. pursued his goal of racial equality? Dr. King once said we must accept finite disappointment but never lose infinite hope. This means that you must accept little defeats to reach your overall goal. Dr. King followed this quote by not giving up, accepting defeat, and not caring what others thought of him. One way Dr. King worked towards his goal was he never gave up. I'm sure that Dr. King felt discouraged at some point when trying to give the United States racial equality, but never gave up. The thing that made Dr. King want to keep going was that he knew that if he gave up, he would never achieve his goal, but if he pursued his goal, he would achieve it. An example of determination is when Dr. King's house was bombed. He could have given up and nobody would have been mad at him, but he kept going and pursuing his goal. He knew that when he accomplished his goal, he would feel accomplished. And I'm sure when he did, he felt more accomplished than he ever had. Like mentioned previously, Dr. King said we must accept finite disappointment. In other words, Dr. King meant we must accept little defeats. Dr. King said this because he knew that if he got caught up trying to achieve something that was not really a goal of his, it would distract and delay him from reaching his main goal. An example of this quote is Rosa Parks. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus, she went to jail, but in the end, she got what she wanted. I'm sure she did not care about getting kicked off the bus. After all, African Americans were allowed to sit in the same place as everyone else on the bus. The final way Dr. King pursued his goal was not caring what others thought of him. He did not let what others thought get in his way. There were a lot of people who did not believe in what he believed in. Those people gave him a hard time, but he did not get discouraged. A lot of people care when someone says something negative or unkind to them and can stop them from achieving their goals in life. People told Dr. King that he would never reach his goal, but he did not let other people's thoughts get in his head and prevent him from fighting for his goal. In conclusion, Dr. King pursued his goal by never losing hope, accepting little defeats, and not getting discouraged by others. Dr. King had problems arise when going for his goal, but he eventually changed laws. Think about how the world would be today if Dr. King did not exist or he had given up hope. The world would not be the same. Just remember the next time you're having issues achieving a goal of your own to never lose infinite hope.
Hello, I am Allie Harmon. I attend Dr. Mona J. Middle School and I am in 8th grade. Everyone goes through tough times, disappointments, and failure. Those disappointments, failures, and tough times should not prevent us from trying again. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope." This quote has come to be something that I hold close to my heart. This quote means to me that when we are struggling, not wanting to try again, we must try again. We must get back up, and we must achieve whatever goal is making us feel so defeated. Although we cannot fully prevent failure, we can prepare for it. We can prepare for letdowns and disappointments. We can set our emotions into place and get the tissues ready. You can ask for help and mingle your way into somebody's good side to avoid failure, but there is no guarantee that you will not fail. You can ask peers for help and input to improve, but that still does not guarantee you will not fail. Life is full of failure and disappointment, but it does not mean we should curl up into a ball and never try again. Failure is just a roadblock we need to learn how to move past. You may have wanted a promotion at work, and you tried so hard, including sucking up to the boss and asking other coworkers what they may think of your proposition. That does not guarantee you will get the promotion. Your teacher may have assigned classroom jobs, and you really wanted a specific one. You decided that you will make the teacher a card in order to persuade them. You may have even bribed some classmates who also wanted it, but again, that does not guarantee you will get the job. Even when you are feeling down and are asking, well, how am I supposed to try again? Take a long, hard look at some of your favorite celebrities. Most of them have failed more than once, twice, even more than 10 times, until they finally made their first movie, game, shows, books, and more varying on the celebrity. There are major disappointments and failures throughout our lives. We cannot prevent them, but we can learn and improve from them. Life would not be interesting or hard without all these challenges and difficulties that we need to learn how to prepare for. Not just physically prepare, but emotionally prepare. So that when you get knocked down, you can stand right back up, ready to try again. You need to go through failures and disappointments because then when you finally succeed, you can celebrate. You could be at work and you just got that promotion you so desperately wanted. Or you could be at school, you just got back a test and you got an 100%. Your success comes from failure. When you try repeatedly, you become more determined and tend to become more accurate, which then leads you to success in proudful moments. Even if you have a small failure, such as messing up a math problem, which led to a wrong answer, that is a learning point. And when you figure out that you have the wrong answer or something may not look right, you fix it, try again, and learn from it. Now that you know what this quote means to me and how I use it in my everyday life, you may use it in yours. This quote helps me prepare, keep trying, and succeed after and during failure. Failure comes and goes. It is simply a fixable, minor problem. May this be an inspiration and motivation to encourage you to get up after failure, try again, and succeed. Thank you.
Number 5, Edward.
Hello, my name is Edward Grayson. I am an 8th grader that attends Dr. Mona Jane Middle School. Webster's Dictionary describes the word finite as having definite or definable limits. The legacy of Dr. King's impact and the power to inspire have proven to be infinite. I wonder what it would have been like to hear him say it in person. Wonder if I would have fully understood what he meant in the moment. I wonder if I can fully express my appreciation for what these powerful words have taught me all these years later. We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope, is telling us that any undertaking, especially those that are monumental, will have setbacks and moments of doubt. But you must keep the faith that inspired you to begin the journey throughout. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote is important because the quote tells people to keep moving through struggle. He's asking us to focus on the light that will come at the end of the tunnel and not the darkness that can surround us as we make our way. He's reminding us that faith and determination will be tested and that we must persevere in spite of setbacks. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote was spoken at a time when the civil rights movement was a major topic throughout our country, a time where the nation was very divided, and there were so many instances of setbacks and frustrations for all those seeking equality. This quote is so relevant today as there are so many people who can be overwhelmed by the frustrations of trying to navigate social issues, political issues, belief issues, and personal freedoms. Every single day, you can turn on the news, open the newspaper, or look at a feed on social media that will give you example after example of finite disappointment. Dr. King's quote can help people who are struggling to find their own voice. These words can inspire people to stay true to themselves by embracing that infinite hope. How many people have lost their way since the pandemic or in its aftermath? How many people today have questioned the government or the institutions that usually help people find their answers? Dr. King's quote helps us anchor ourselves by setting realistic expectations. No journey is without a setback. Do not expect everything to go perfectly, but do not quit when the disappointments inevitably come. Never give up hope for a better tomorrow. Hope is eternal. We have the power to decide when to quit or when to keep going. We have the opportunity every day to try and make progress. We have the power to move mountains. Hope can move mountains. The huge issues that we face as a country, or the huge issues we face in our own daily lives, every single day, regardless of the issue we are trying to overcome, we are presented with reasons to keep going and reasons to give up. But we need to remember what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was trying to teach us. The key ingredient to help inspire the best in humanity is hope. Thank you.
Good evening, judges, fellow finalists, and parents. My name is Kyla Logan, and I'm currently in 8th grade at Dr. Mona Jane Middle School. I'm delighted to present to you my speech tonight. The title of my speech is Keep Moving, Keep Grooving. About 1 in every 5 adults in the United States suffers from a mental disorder. That is nearly 66 million people hurting as a result of a traumatic event they endured. After a setback, you may want to draw the curtains and pull the covers over your head. However, you must learn to have hope in tough times. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope." I believe that this determined leader meant to keep moving, as our founding fathers and Katherine Johnson did in the past, and as the United Nations is in the process of doing so currently. It is important to realize that after an inconvenience, you must overcome that disappointed feeling. For example, the great founders of this country experienced disappointment. After a well-deserved victory over the British in the creation of the 13 colonies, our nation's authors devised an important document for the country. The Articles of Confederation, as this was called, declared that legal decisions regarding the nation would be voted on by the states to ensure that a tyranny would not develop. Nearly 8 years following the writing of this document, our forefathers discovered that the Articles had caused many problems throughout the colonies, and time had come to create a stronger system of law. Of course, our founders were discouraged by this burden. However, they ended up producing the much more elaborate Constitution. Long before we were born, people kept moving after running into challenging times. Katherine Johnson also endured many obstacles in her workplace. Growing up in a small town in West Virginia, Johnson realized her love for math at the age of 10 and graduated from college with honors at the age of 18. Later on, Johnson took a job at NASA, where she solved mathematics problems for the space race. Katherine Johnson was different from the other computers, as the black women at NASA were called. Asking many questions and attending meetings, usually only for men, she moved up in line and got involved with projects concerning the nation's orbit around the Earth and Moon. Katherine Johnson was told frequently that math and science was a man's field, which is incredibly restraining, but kept on pushing herself and became a pioneer for women in STEM. Even though this brilliant woman experienced injustice up close, she continued working hard for the setbacks she encountered. Lastly, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a notable example of the present-day movement. Their number one goal is to end poverty by 2030, and they are working hard to accomplish that target. Over 689 million people live under $1.90 a day. That amount cannot even purchase a loaf of bread. These people cannot afford water, shelter, or food, let alone achieve a job. Healthy sustenance in developing countries is often hard to come by and contaminated. The malnutrition and the disease of the impoverished causes over 22,000 childhood deaths a day. Hunger and disease are a standard for those suffering in squalor. Those living in the slums of Mumbai, the ghettos of Nairobi, and the war-torn villages of Somalia and Sudan deserve to live in peace, which is why the UN is making intentions to end the devastation of poverty. Poverty may be a current problem, but hopefully this issue will be diminished if the United Nations continues to aim for their goal, like Dr. King once did. Overall, problems have always been and always will be recurrent in mankind. As you now know, even today, issues are prevalent around the world. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope." He meant to continue to persist, regardless of the difficulty, just as our founders did in colonial America, Katherine Johnson did during the space race, and the UN is doing today. The next time you disappoint yourself or someone else, remember that after a long, dark night, the sun will always rise somewhere. You must stand up and walk towards an unknown future. You may then not enjoy the process, but you must keep moving. Thank you.
Number 7, Victoria.
Good evening. My name is Victoria Peterson. I'm in 8th grade and I attend Dr. Mona Jane Middle School. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Having hope is a powerful thing, as it shows you believe your situation can improve regardless of what may happen. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope." To me, this quote means staying hopeful is vital for one's success. Possessing the characteristic of hopefulness can improve our quality of life, help us to cope with adversity, and motivate positive change. Even in times of disappointment, if we remain hopeful, we can overcome anything. Initially, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a civil rights activist who, by remaining hopeful, improved the quality of life for African Americans across the country. Antoinette Marinelli once wrote, "Us as humans can live without a lot of things, but living without hope can cause a detriment to our well-being." On those days where you wake up feeling like the world is not exactly the way it should be, you turn to hope. This quote helps us to understand how important pieces of history, such as the Civil Rights Movement, began. The Civil Rights Movement was a struggle for social justice that took place during the 1950s and 1960s for African Americans to gain equal rights under the law in the United States. Throughout the Civil Rights Movement, determined activists turned to hope as their beacon of light. Their determination soon paid off. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed and prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, gender, or national origin. Remaining hopeful pushed the movement for equality and allowed for African Americans' quality of life to improve. Furthermore, the hope Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had in the possibility of equality among all Americans allowed him to work towards positive change. Hope helps us remain committed to our goals and motivated to act towards achieving them. Hope gives people a reason to continue fighting and believing that their circumstances will improve despite the unpredictable nature of human existence. A quote by Elaine Houston. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. helped bring about both the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Both bills helped to better the lives of African Americans across the country. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is a landmark civil rights and labor law in the United States that outlawed discrimination. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 outlawed the discriminatory voting practices adopted in many southern states after the Civil War, including literacy tests as a prerequisite to voting. King's actions and accomplishments prove that with hope, you can overcome any obstacle that crosses your path, achieve any goal you set your mind to, and prove anyone who says you cannot accomplish something wrong. Michelle Obama once said, "It is our fundamental belief in the power of hope that has allowed us to rise above the voices of doubt and division, of anger and fear that we face in our own lives. Our hope that if we work hard enough and believe in ourselves, we can be whatever we dream, regardless of the limitations that others may place on us." Hope reduces feelings of helplessness, giving us the strength to overcome whatever life throws our way. To end, the quote, "We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope," as stated by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to me means hope is a key aspect of your success. Staying hopeful can benefit us in numerous ways, such as improving our quality of life, helping us to cope with adversity, and motivating positive change. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "I have a dream." The hope he had in his dream boosted the movement for equality and permanently changed America for the better. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kyra Morales. I am a student at Dr. Mona J. Middle School, and I am in 8th grade. As unlikely as it may appear, research reveals that hope and optimism may improve your mental and physical health. According to a 2019 study, hope is directly associated to 11 to 15% chance of a longer lifespan on average, as well as a higher likelihood of living to the age of 85 or beyond. Martin Luther King said on February 6, 1968, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. We must keep hope for a brighter future and accept disappointment as a temporary setback." Despite the challenges and difficulties we will face as individuals, if we have hope in our hearts for a better future, we will be able to get through tough times and journey toward it. We all face challenging times, and we all get hurt. But hope helps us see that there are many positive possibilities ahead of us. Hope puts hurt and pain into perspective and reminds us that things are forever changing. When we are at our lowest point, it is hope that lifts our head and shows us a path towards something good. Hope is like trust. When your general feelings are negative, you must trust they'll pass. The hope is not bound to a specific goal. It may nonetheless be a guiding force in our life. When we have hope, we are more likely to see the chances that come our way. When we have hope, we are more inclined to act in ways that support a more peaceful and enjoyable lifestyle. When Martin Luther King Jr. states, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope," he mentions to never lose infinite hope. Hope is the guide and motivation to one's success. Hope is important, and you can never lose it. Hope is like an unseen compass that directs us towards something positive for our future. Disappointment creates learning, improvement, and growth. By denying our wants and desires, we eventually suffer more pain and disappointment. Many times in my life, I have been disappointed with my decisions and regretted what I have done. But the longer I sat there thinking about it and did nothing about it, the worse it became. When you let disappointment get to you, it will not get better. Therefore, it is important to just accept and learn from it. It is impossible to avoid disappointment. While it may not feel good, disappointment and learning to deal with it might help prepare you for challenging situations later in life. Whether your disappointment was caused by a mistake, a failed objective, or poor personal decision, you must take that opportunity to move forward. When Martin Luther King Jr. mentions that we must accept disappointment, it relates to how life may challenge you or disappoint you. You must learn to accept and move onward. We are confronted with problems from the minute we enter the world, and they will continue to confront us until we die. Even when we first entered school, we encountered obstacles such as tests and competition from classmates. Our difficulties do not end there. As we grow older, we begin to face more and more obstacles. We try to avoid obstacles as they come, despite them never leaving. We believe that if we run away from these obstacles, they'll go away. But this is a mistake. Whatever the cause, we should never run away from an obstacle. Instead, we must confront and question them. This is important to our own success. Running away from challenges can never lead to success. Rather, we only experience victory and the glory that comes with it if we face and win this situation. If we accept disappointment and look for hope in the future, these challenges will allow us to improve in our mistakes. Martin Luther King said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." This quote's meaning is that a short-term disappointment or failure should not influence our future's hope or expectations. We must keep our sights on the future and accept disappointment just as a temporary setback.
Hello, my name is Alexander Fallu, and I attend Dr. Mona Jane Middle School, and I'm in 8th grade. Years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." To me, this means that in any situation that we face disappointment, we must keep hope because it stays with us until the very end. Personally, I haven't had any significant disappointments yet, at least none I can remember. Thankfully, my parents have always been able to overcome and push through their challenges so I can live incredibly blessed. Their transparency with their life experiences has helped me see life as a glass half full instead of half empty. So in a nutshell, I've learned to expect nothing and appreciate everything through the challenges that my parents have gone through. For instance, my dad had to overcome many challenges throughout his life. He was born in the Dominican Republic, and growing up, my grandfather had his own welding company, so they lived very comfortably. However, one day, life took a significant turn when my grandparents decided to go to the US. Not having US citizenship complicated things a little more, and they had to leave my dad and uncle behind in a boarding school. You can imagine my father's disappointment, being 10 years old and your parents leaving you so they could try to secure a better future for you. What 10-year-old would understand that? Through this, they kept the hope that one day they would be reunited with their parents. At the age of 15, my grandmother sent for my dad to come to New York. At the time, he only knew Spanish, so high school was very challenging for him. But through this, he kept his hope, and one day he graduated. After he graduated, he joined the Marine Corps. His boot camp stories are funny today after the fact, but while he was going through it, it was definitely survival of the fittest. Not understanding English and having to learn it without help must have felt impossible, but he did it. His dream was to succeed in this country and have a family, which is precisely what he did. My mom, on the other hand, is a second-generation Puerto Rican. This basically just means that my grandparents were born in Puerto Rico, and she was born here in the US. My grandparents and great-grandparents were struggling entrepreneurs. They worked very hard, but they didn't make much money. My grandmother always pushed education because she wanted a better life for her children. Her hope, yeah. My mom has told me stories of how she had to support her family by working from a very young age. Her hope was to do better in life so that her children didn't have to struggle the way she did. I can only imagine having to work at the age of 14 to help support your family and balance school at the same time. Today, my mom's still a workaholic, but I love her for it. My parents have always been transparent about the challenges they've faced throughout their lives. Hope has always kept them pushing forward, but not just hope, hope in God. They've always encouraged me to take advantage of the blessings and opportunities I receive. So for me, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. says we must accept finite disappointment but never lose infinite hope, it truly means that through their struggles, I've been given the opportunity to thrive. I know that someday I will deal with my own difficulties, but their testimonies will keep me in hopeful expectation that what I'm going through, I can get through. Thank you.
My name is Kara Rue. I attend Dr. Mona Jane Middle School, and I am in 8th grade. Marching down the street, surrounded by thousands of people singing "People Get Ready" and signs that read "Freedom Now" and "We Demand Voting Rights." This was part of a daily routine for African Americans in the 1950s and 60s. The civil rights movement, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., abolished racial injustice and made all races equal under the law. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "We must accept finite disappointment but never lose infinite hope." This means never lose hope through all failure and disappointment. King's words inspired a whole generation to fight for what they believed in and paved the way for a brighter future. Hope, the belief that our future can be better than the past, and it's a dream that keeps you going. Everyone has something to hope for, whether it is to go to college or to buy something new like a computer. Throughout life, you will always face hardships, but you cannot let those difficulties make you lose your sense of hope. Without hope, you would have no sense of passion or direction in life. You would struggle to succeed in today's society without hope. The main idea to take away from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote is that through all the disaster and misfortune, you must never lose sight of your dream. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote was demonstrated frequently throughout the civil rights movement. The Greensboro sit-in was a peaceful protest that started in 1960 that protested a segregated diner. 4 students protested at Woolworth's Diner, where they refused to serve anyone but Caucasians. Once they sat down, the police were called to arrest the protesters. But because they were not doing any harm, the police were unable to arrest the students. By March of 1960, more than 300 students had united to protest at Woolworth's Diner, which captivated the town. Media coverage of the Greensboro sit-ins sparked a sit-in movement that developed throughout the South and into the North, as African Americans and whites joined in numerous forms of peaceful protest against segregation in parks, theaters, and other institutions. These protesters never lost hope all the times they had the police called on them or the times they were called racial slurs. They always dreamed of a future where there is no segregation and kids can walk down the street and not be ashamed of their skin color. They had hope for a better future and achieved it. Nevertheless, with all hope and good in life comes failure. Everyone in the world has failed at something, whether this is a grade on a test or not getting the job they wanted. The most successful people in life have encountered failure hundreds of times and have persevered through the hardship to find achievements and accomplishments. Michael Jordan, arguably the best basketball player of all time, was cut from the high school varsity team and placed on the junior varsity team. He was not going to let his dream of being in the NBA get derailed because he did not make it on the first team. So he worked for hundreds of hours on the court by himself to improve, and in 1 year, he was the best basketball player on the varsity team. He did not let failure stop him from achieving his dream. He persevered and worked tirelessly to improve himself, going from a kid who was not good enough to make his high school team to becoming the best player in the NBA is what never giving up and hope looks like. Described as to cherish a desire with anticipation by the Webster Dictionary, hope is a wish that anyone can act upon to make themselves happier and more content in life. I interpret King's quote, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope," as never stop dreaming through all the heartache that troubles that life will throw at you. Fritz Knapp said, in fact, hope is best gained after defeat and failure, because then inner strength and toughness is produced. Thank you.
All right. My name is Camden Walsh. I'm a student at WD Sugg Middle School, and I'm in the 8th grade. Martin Luther King Jr. was a civil rights activist who led the movement against segregation and prejudice via peaceful protest. On April 4, 2 months before his assassination, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope." This quote is one of the most important things Martin Luther King has said, and it means 3 things to me. The first meaning I inferred from this quote is that disappointment is natural when you pursue an important goal. This is the first part of Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote. We must accept finite disappointment. In this quote, hold on. In this quote, finite means any amount that is not immeasurable or infinite. When you set a goal like making an ambitious volcano project or getting a job, you are likely to meet obstacles or problems that complicate your first expectations. For example, during the making of the volcano project, you might realize that you had used the wrong material and must either work around it or start over. Or, while trying to get a job, you realize that the requirements of the job do not match what you are capable of. While these are certainly disappointing, it is also reassuring because you are learning what the goal requires and what to avoid. You learn that the way you approach these goals needs improvement, and you are now closer to achieving them. Speaking of which, the second meaning I got from this quote is that persistence and hope are important to achieving our goals. This is the second part of Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote, but we must never lose infinite hope. You must be able to continue working on achieving goals even if you face major obstacles. Take a video game level, for example. Even if a player gets confused about what they must do next, they are still willing to experiment with what they have until they figure out a way to beat the level. And even if the player is unable to defeat a certain enemy, they are willing to practice fighting them until they can defeat the enemy. This is because the player has hope that they will get the eureka feeling and beat the level. Additionally, if you still aspire to get your dream job, you may persist in meeting the requirements of the job. In conclusion, persistence is valuable to achieve goals you are struggling with. The third and final meaning I have from Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote is that you should never give up on your dreams or goals. I got this meaning by looking at the entire quote. Even if you do not achieve your goal, and even if you start to think your dream is impossible, you should never give up. After meeting the requirements for a job, if you fail the interview, you should not give up then. Instead, you should figure out what went wrong with the interview and look for another company to try again. Martin Luther King Jr. had this mindset when he was leading the movement to end segregation. Even after being arrested 20 times for protesting and being targeted by several violent attacks, King was still able to achieve equal rights for all Black Americans. He did not ever give up on his dream. If Martin Luther King Jr. can persist even when times are rough, you can too. In conclusion, this is what Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote means to me. Disappointment is natural, persistence is important, and you should never give up. If you have a goal that you're struggling with, do not give up. You can do it. Thank you.
Number one in the high school category, Sean.
Sean Mayfair Drennan, Braden River High School, grade 12. We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope. Words that hold such weight, yearned for in the trenches of struggle, but often overlooked in favor of sorrow by man's folly. These words, so limited yet deliberate, hold a sentiment that is undeniably salient, even when delivered among the many more protrusive messages of Martin Luther King Jr.'s renowned speech. Even though these words were spoken nearly 60 years ago, they still play under the breath of American action. Ultimately, it is because of these notions of the singular sentence that I present myself in front of you today. Throughout any number of obstacles I have faced, it is the strength of these words that has been there to remind me of the existence of a light that permeates through the darkness, and that day will always return no matter how long the night rules over. Whether fraught with the liability of severe financial downturn or familial dissonance, I have been able to see the unspoken promises of these words and decide that the cost of the present will be worth the sweet providence of fruits which lie ahead of me. But these words are not a static sensation, calling for the development and amelioration of the individual with every address that is wholeheartedly given to them. As a creator in many fields, I've experienced this on a constant basis. For many years, developing not only my physical skills as a visual artist, but also my voice, I have faced countless snags in attempting to conquer various mediums as well as topics, and have concurrently found myself doubting my abilities and the messages that I hope to convey through my works. However, standing here today, I know that these setbacks have not stopped me from generating breakthroughs and advancing my position in the world of art, ineffably driven by the motivation of these words, which hold as a foundation of sedulous action. And while there may be barriers in addressing an unfamiliarity, it is these words that speak to finding the way around these walls, whether that comes in the form of a door, a staircase, or a robust wrecking ball. It is the will to improve upon oneself and the conditions that surround them derived from hope in any field that turn the assured impediments of existence into instances of progression that would fail to emerge and blossom had there been no seed to spur their growth. Much of this also finds itself applicable to my experiences as a writer and, more recently, a performer. There is no denying that the intricacies of tone and emotional expression in both literary extensions of diction and syntax and the gestural and vocal basis of dance and theatrical productions are often vulnerable to these pitfalls. As two of the most intimate mediums of externalization, it can be difficult to possess a level of courage to enact feelings that may be conducive of ignominy for the entertainment and scrutiny of onlookers. However, with time, a writer or performer discovers and expands their capabilities through experience and overcomes the faults of their past that once may have felt unsurpassable and hopeless, gaining back authority and independence from the bouts of disappointment that once kept them from greatness. And it is because of this found connection to the arts that I have felt such a distinct impact. But when considering these words at length, they have become entirely universal to my life. Ornately spanning the realms of domestic artistry, this core mentality has seen itself applicable to any situation that one has been willing to entertain it with, since having first been spoken into existence by Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963, forever living on in the resonance of freedom's bells and the will of America. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Denise Candela. I attend Braden River High School, and I'm in 12th grade. Disappointment, one of the worst feelings to ever feel, not only for yourself, but from others too. Without a doubt, most of us have felt this feeling before. Whether you're a child or a parent, disappointment has entered your heart at least once in your life, even when you think it didn't. It could come from getting a bad test grade, not winning first in a competition, or from not getting into your dream college. But on the other side of this feeling is endless hope that comes from never giving up and accepting failure. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope." If I rephrase this, to me the quote reads, "Accept disappointment because it's not forever, but never settle or lose endless hope." Finite disappointment is what most of us experience. The feeling only lasts so long and doesn't stay forever with us. But that is not true for hope. Infinite hope is the opposite of finite disappointment. Instead of having hope for a certain amount of time, it stays with us for infinity. We shouldn't have to feel disappointed forever. How could that be fair to us? We need to let go of the past and move on. That way we're not dragged down by a constant feeling of discontent. Now think of a time that you felt a feeling of some type of hope. Maybe it was hoping you'll win the lottery, hoping you'll pass the test, or hoping you'll get the job. Any sense of optimism is hope, and we should never lose optimism, which is why hope will always be with us. Hope makes our mindsights better, whereas disappointment only makes it worse. The quote that Martin Luther King Jr. said reminds me of a time when I studied so hard for the SAT and didn't receive the score I wanted and became so disappointed in myself that it caused me to do bad in my classes. It wasn't until one of my teachers talked to me after class and said he was concerned that I started doing bad in his class. I was a junior at the time, so I had almost a year to study and get the score I wanted. And my teacher reminded me of that. I couldn't bear the thought of potentially ruining my future education based off one bad score and realized I needed to change something. With that said, I pulled my act together and got back to the top of my game, doing better in my classes and did more preparation for the SAT. Later that year, I retook the SAT, and after all of my studying, I ended up getting a higher score than I planned on getting. So if my teacher hadn't reminded me that there was hope of success, I would still be disappointed of myself and continue to do bad in my classes. This is what Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote means to me. The finite disappointment didn't stay with me forever. It faded away once I spoke to my teacher. However, I kept infinite hope throughout the whole time, even from when I took the first SAT. And though I failed and went to a dark place, I held it with me and overcame all of it. I experienced something that turned my life into darkness, but I ended up overcoming my own disappointment and kept hope in myself to get my grades back up and receive a high SAT score. So always remember, whatever obstacle you encounter, never let yourself feel disappointed for eternity, but you must always keep hope in yourself to keep your mindset optimistic to overcome your struggles. Thank you.
My name is Alana Frazier, and I'm a 12th grade student at Braid River High School. The failure of a hero in the eyes of a villain is success. A villain only reaps the benefits of a hero's defeat if a hero lets failure consume their image. A hero may be impenetrable at heart, but a self-perception of incompetence fuels a villain's achievements. However, a hero should not fear failure. Panic towards failure declares a hero's loss. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope." Dr. King is alluding to the notion that if a hero loses hope, then a villain wins, because a villain feeds off of a hero's fear and timidity. Disappointment is inevitable for a hero working to dethrone a villain. Mistakes are inescapable. Take, for example, a student in school who fails their Unit 1 geometry test. This student made mistakes on their exam, but cannot lose hope of success because the Unit 2 geometry test is arriving soon. If the student neglects to study because they lost hope of improvement, then the student guarantees failure on their next geometry test. The villain of the student is the test, but the test alone is not the villain. Only when the student allows the test to break down their confidence does the test succeed. Dr. King's quote, though not directly referring to a student's battle with a test, carries as much as over to the scenario. Disappointment from a low test score is a rite of passage that every student faces, but it is the students that move past defeat and go towards the hope of future success that win. Taking Dr. King's quote into a broader context, the message applies beyond the previous school example to overall life experiences. One can place themselves in the position of civil rights activists in the 1960s, like Dr. King, who were noble heroes fighting against the villain of discrimination. Disappointment rose with every setback the heroes for equality faced, but their hope drove them. Dr. King's words aimed to inspire the civil rights activists, not to forget the disappointments faced, but to keep the disappointments in their minds, to channel hope that eventually the disappointments will be overcome by success. Dr. King acknowledges that disappointment exists. This action moves over a barrier heroes face for equality, as if a hero were to enter a battle without the acceptance that disappointment will occur, then the hero will be unprepared when disappointment strikes. Arrogance that one can forever avoid disappointment only lets the inevitable disappointment hurt worse. A mental wound on a hero impacts them as any physical wound would, as a villain is rewarded by any degradation of a hero, including self-inflicted pain. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but must never lose infinite hope." A villain takes upon an infinite number of forms, whether the villain be a person or a difficult exam. However, it is the hero of the story who decides whether the villain wins or loses. In the face of inevitable disappointment, a hero must continue forth, fueled by the notion of hope that one day the villain will lose. A villain will forever win if a hero decides that a fight is not worth taking because moments of defeat and despair will be faced. The failure of a hero in the eyes of a villain is success, but the perseverance of a hero in the eyes of a villain is a nightmare. Thank you.
Let's give all of our students a hand. You did a wonderful job, and you're making our judges' tabulations very difficult. We're going to take some time to go in the back and tabulate the results. We do have some refreshments for you tonight, and we'll be back as soon as we can. So let's give all of our contestants a round of applause again. It was a very difficult decision, and I am going to make you guys wait a little bit because I want to recognize everyone, okay? But first, I'd like to introduce our judges for the contest. They are Frida Bellamy, Brenda Harvey, Kenyatta Randall, Stefanti Randall, and Sharon Cheatham. Let's give our judges a hand. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. We've had some wonderful sponsors that have been with us since day one. So for 22 years, we've had these sponsors, and that's amazing. So I would like to thank Bells for providing the contest finalists the gifts they will receive today, as well as the cash prizes that our grand prize winners will receive. I would like to thank CS&L CPAs and Blaylock Walters for providing the computers and the printers that our grand prize winners will receive. I would also like to thank METV and the wonderful staff and support system we have here today for videotaping the finals, which will be available for you guys to see on YouTube. And I would just like to thank all of the teachers and the parents and everyone that has got the kids here today and have been a great support system for our kids. I'd like you guys to give you guys a hand now. Give yourself a hand. So, before we get started with the winners, I'm gonna call your names up. Please come up and get your certificate as well as your goodie bag. So, Carolyn Barlock, Alexander Falou, Jacob Gomez, Edward Grayson, Allie Harmon, Caitlin Katalski, Kyla Logan, Kyra Morales, Victoria Peterson, Kara Rue, Camden Walsh, Denise Candela, Alana Frazier, Sean Mayfair Drennan, let's give our students a hand. So we'll start with the middle school category. In the middle school category, we have an honorable mention participant. This person will win $50 in cash. Well, check. And that winner is Camden Walsh. Right. In third place, and the winner of $75, Alexander Falou. In second place, in the middle school category, and the winner of $100, Kyla Logan. And our grand prize winner in the middle school category, the winner of $150, a brand new laptop computer, a brand new printer, and an Alexa show, is Edward Grayson. Now on to our high school category. In third place, and the winner of $75, Denise Candela. In second place, in the high school category, and the winner of $100, Sean Mayfair Drennan. Now, in first place, and the winner of a brand new laptop computer and printer and Alexa show, as well as $150, Alana Frazier. So, let's give our kids a hand again. All of these students who were winners today will receive an invitation to attend the Martin Luther King banquet next Friday. And the grand prize winners in each category will present their winning entries at that banquet. And at that banquet, you will always also receive all of your checks. So make sure you're there. You'll get your computer and printers and that as well. So thank you guys for coming out. We appreciate everything that you do, parents and teachers, and have a great night. That concludes our presentation.